Hello, this is the third in a series of this year's Telling the Truth about Dementia. Now, last week we spoke about actually going for a diagnosis. So this week we'll talk about when you've actually got a diagnosis of dementia, regardless of what type it is. Now, when you actually get diagnosed and it's a definite that unfortunately someone you know, or maybe even yourself or someone you live with or someone you love has been diagnosed with dementia, this is when things change dramatically. Your whole life will change in an instant. Now, whereas in the last video I said, if you want people to get diagnosed, take them to the doctors or take them, to the consultant in the afternoon if they are sundowning, just to show them at their worst. I'd just like to reiterate that I didn't want you to drag people out when they're at the absolute worst and take them to the doctors when they're not fit to go anywhere. What I was saying is I just want to make sure that the doctors knew and they see them when they're actually sundowning, so they know they've definitely got dementia. Because I've got friends that have been for a mini-mental scan, and they've had a mini-mental test rather, sorry. They've answered, say, 20 questions, and they've got all 20 right. And they've come out saying, what's your problem? And they've got in the car, and halfway home, the wife turned around and said, where have you just been? They've said, I've no idea. They have no memory where they've just been. So always make sure you get it right if you can. It's not always possible. But today we'll talk about when you actually get a diagnosis, because this is when it changes. If you have a diagnosis, then the easiest thing you can do to help yourself, your family, and other professionals, if the person you know who's got dementia is actually sundowning, then please take them first thing in the morning. Change your appointments to see the doctors, the consultants, the dentist, the podiatrist, whoever it is. If they're sundowning in the afternoon, always make the appointments in the morning. For the simple reason being, that's when they'll be at their best. It'll make your job easier as a carer. It'll make their job easier because they'll not be as anxious or frightened. And it will make the professional's job easier because they won't have any anxiousness or any nervous tension building up between them because they'll be at their best. That's probably one of the simplest things we can advise you on that. Now we come to the bit that's not controversial. But a lot of people have said I shouldn't really say this, but this year is all about telling the truth about dementia. Dementia in itself is awful. Dementia in itself is despicable. And what you won't get told is probably the majority of it when you first get diagnosed, because you don't know what you don't know. And that's nobody's fault. That's not your fault, my fault, anybody else's fault. But with dementia comes incontinence. Incontinence as in wetting themselves or the other way. Not always and not in every type of dementia, but it happens. You would not believe how many times we've been told that people weren't warned about that. People didn't know they maybe had to start changing their partners, their wives, their husbands. They've never done that before. Don't forget when dementia comes. You didn't ask to be a carer. You didn't ask for this, and neither did them. And when I do presentations, I always say, people who are incontinent with dementia, either way, whether they get wet or the other, they don't do it on purpose. They don't do it to wind you up. They don't do it just to annoy you. If you think if they were living a normal life, they would be mortified if they knew what was happening and what was going on. But it happens. The signal from the brain to the bladder or the other has got lost. So they have no idea when they're urinating, and they have no idea when they're doing the other. But sometimes the thing is, the signal from the nostrils to the brain have not been affected. So therefore, they can still smell. Now, you tell me what you would feel like if you just suddenly sat there, didn't know you was wet, or didn't know you was soiled, but all of a sudden you could smell it. How would you feel? That's how they feel. It must be absolutely horrendous. But yet so many people aren't told about this. The other thing is, we will talk about sundowning, we'll talk about that in a later video. But the other thing is with Lewy bodies particular, and sometimes in other dimensions, is the hallucinations. Now, hallucinations are massively different than night terrors. Night terrors are massively different than just nightmares. They're totally different. Unfortunately, I suffer from both night terrors and hallucinations. But they aren't what a lot of people think. Because when people think of hallucinations, when people think, oh, they can see this, they can see that, but they can't really, they don't believe it. But it's real. It's real for me, and it's real for people with dementia. It's as real as you trying to say to me now, I'm not doing this. I've stood in presentations and said, can you imagine doubting that what you're actually saying or what you're actually doing at this moment is actually happening because you don't know whether it's real or not? How awful would that be? That's what it feels like a lot of the time. Many, many times during normal conversation, I have to say to people, did you understand that? Did you understand what I said then? Because I have a fear that I'm not making sense. Sometimes I can sit in a chair, apparently the lane tells me, I can have a conversation for half an hour. I have no memory of it whatsoever. But the thing is, the conversation I'm having isn't in English or any other language. It's in just nonsensical gibberish. But apparently it makes sense to me. You know, I've seen rabbits in the front room. I've seen people walking towards me. During the night, I've fought for my life. During the night, the majority of hallucinations I have, I'm trying to save lives, or I'm trying to save family members. And what I see is horrific. You wouldn't see it in a XXX movie. It's that bad. And yet we still have to get up in the morning and do what we do if we can. Does it bother me during the day? Yes. Do I scream and shout at night? Yes. Do I kick? Yes. Do I fight and punch? Yes. There's nobody there. It's like shadow boxing. But nobody tells anybody that this may happen with Lewy bodies, or this may happen to anybody else with some other type of dementia, because as much as once you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia, which is perfectly true. But that doesn't mean to say that some of us don't have similar symptoms. Nobody tells you about the kicking, the punching, the screaming. And what nobody else tells you about is the mood changes that people have. Do you know, it's so frustrating for the carers because none of them know anything. Lots of them don't know anything like this. But in this year of keeping it honest and keeping it truthful, believe me, when people get dementia, it's a disease of the brain. It has nothing to do with the way they're being cared for, because otherwise that would be a damning thing to say about carers. And people think that, oh, they're only acting like that because the way they're being cared for. That's putting the fault on the carers. That is just not true. It's a disease of the brain. It's certainly not the environment they're in, because some of these care homes are absolutely stunning. And I know a few that's lovely. All up and down the country, not just around here in Devon, in the UK. So it's nothing to do with that. It's the person themselves. They don't know they're kicking, punching. They don't know they're screaming. They don't know they're incontinent. This is the thing. They keep repeating themselves time and time and time again. But every time they ask that question to you, and nobody's perfect, guys. Nobody's perfect. And if anybody's asking you the same question 100 times in half an hour, it's going to get annoying. I don't care who you are, it's going to get annoying. But the thing is, the people that's asking these questions have no memory. It's the first time they're asking this. And they will ask again and again and again. Because every time you answer, it's the first time they've heard the answer as well. And as much as you're patient, you're only human. And I do understand, I really do. Because I don't know if I could do it. I've said this so many times to Elaine. I probably would, I mean, of course, because I love my family, I love my wife dearly. But the patience you must have is just incredible. And if it wasn't for you guys doing what you do, this country would be broken in half. It's as simple as that. unpaid carers, paid carers, it doesn't matter if it worked for you guys. So please, when you go to get a diagnosis and you've got a definite diagnosis, please ask about these things. Ask about the truth. Ask about what really happens. And they won't say, oh, well, in the worst case scenario. Well, ask. If you want to know that, you don't have to do. You don't have to ask. But if you want to know what worst case scenario is, ask your doctor at early diagnosis, because you need to be prepared. I'm not quite sure what a kind of reaction I'm going to get from this video, because I've been very, very honest in this video. But I hope it's helped, and I hope it helps prepare people for when that diagnosis of dementia comes along. But I pray and pray that that diagnosis never ever comes along for you or a family member. Until next week, stay safe. Bye-bye.